Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session today. It's on how to use Zoom for online live webinars, and we're going to give you a step-by-step guide to using Zoom for live online learning. So it's brilliant to have so many of you join us today. We've put this presentation together for you very carefully and covered off all the questions and queries that we've had in. So it's myself and Daniel delivering the webinar. Hello, Daniel.
Hey everyone, how are you doing today? Hey Amanda. Hey, I can see a few people have joined up with their videos, which is great to see a few faces. We've got Peter Johnson there, and we've also got Simon. How are you guys? How's everyone today? Can you just give me a quick message in the chat box if you can all hear me very well, and you can also hear Amanda? Just give a quick message in the chat box for us. Fantastic.
Wonderful. So we can hear that you're using the chat box. So that's great. So we decided that we'd use Zoom whilst we were delivering this presentation. So you're sort of looking at it from the participant's point of view. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to be looking, myself and Daniel, if we just go through to the agenda, we're going to look at fairly different phases and steps that you need to take with Zoom. So first of all, we're going to look at how you get started, how you choose which pricing tier you go to, and whether you choose to deliver them as webinars or as meeting rooms, because there's little difference between the two. Then we're going to run through the main functionality and the 4 key areas that you've got to look at. And we're going to give you a little bit of feedback on the downsides of using Zoom, because as many of you know, it's not 100% perfect. And then afterwards, we're just going to give you the other technical areas and host a Q&A. So by all means, do ask questions in the chat, and we will try to answer them at the end. But what we prefer to do, particularly as there's so many of you on the chat and attending the webinar, is just take the questions at the end. That would be really helpful. Thank you. So Daniel, over to you.
Fantastic. So yeah, let's just jump straight into it, and let's look at the pricing options. So like as many as you do know, Zoom does actually have a free pricing option, which is great, and it's handy to kind of just start in and wet your feet to kind of get a feel for things. It does have its limitations, such as the number of participants. There's no reporting for that one, and there's no availability for adding the bolt-ons as well. But when you move over to the $11.99 a month, I'm just going to run through this quite quickly. The $11.99 a month hosting plan, which is the Pro plan, you actually get to add on the bolt-ons. So for example, with the basic, you get 100 participants. We had it at 100 participants originally, because the Pro comes with 100 participants, but you can actually also add more participants, which we had to do for this webinar because we did exceed the 100 mark. So we just quickly added on that bolt-on. So there's that flexibility that is added when you do go into the Pro section. And you do get obviously the reporting also, which we'll go into a bit later. You also, there's other tiers. So the next tier up from that is the business tier. When you're looking at this, it is quite, it can be quite deceiving. You have to look at the small print. So here it says starting at 10 hosts. So you have to have 10 times $15.99 to actually access this, which is going to bring that up to £159 per month. So the difference between Pro and business is $147.91. So that is the difference. But then you do get dedicated support. You do have that jump for 100 to 300 participants joining, just as standard. And obviously you get those access to bolt-ons as well. I'll just run through a couple of the bolt-on options with you. So you have additional rooms. You have join toll-free as well, calling. And you also have the ability to add video webinars. So we're going to go into this next, webinars versus meetings. But right now, this is not actually a webinar, it is what Zoom would call a meeting. So we'll get into those differences in just a second. You also got extra cloud storage as well. And you got, you're able to custom email and use your own branding and recording transcripts, which is really cool. I'm going to touch on that in a little while also. So that's the price and packages. A lot of people start off at the Pro. You can start off at the free, obviously, but it does have its limitations, especially as you cannot do the reporting. So it would be wiser to make that small investment of $11.99. You have all the bolt-ons and things like that. So yeah, that would be my advice to you guys. Let's move on to the next slide. Right. So here we got webinar versus meeting rooms. And meeting rooms, it actually starts from free. So that's the free one. The webinar one, like I said, you have to pay for that. It is a bolt-on. So you'll have to get that standard pay package and then add on the webinar for £32 monthly. Now, the key differences between them. So like I said, we are actually now in a meeting, which is great. I think Zoom even itself says it's catered. Zoom says it's catered for training sessions, and webinar is more for kind of bigger situations, and it brings you up to 10,000 people that can come on. So it's really quite different. Whereas Zoom goes up, Zoom meeting goes up to 1,000. So you can still get a lot of people in, and it gives you a lot more options in terms of what you can do. So the waiting room function, for example, that you just experienced now, that actually is only available on meetings. So you can actually have the participants waiting in that waiting area before you admit them all into the webinar, which I think is great. You also have the meeting reactions. So you can say yes, no. Can you see those options at the bottom of the chat box? It says yes, no, go slower, go faster. So you can use those to indicate to the speaker what you would like. Webinar, the plus side with a webinar is that it has a dedicated Q&A section. So the problem now is that with the chat, we're going to have to sift through all of the chats to find the questions, basically, whereas the webinar has a dedicated Q&A section where only questions are asked, and it also allows the participants to interact with that section in a different way, in a more robust and dynamic way, where participants can actually upvote questions. So you can obviously prioritize the questions as well, and also you get the option to do a practice session. With meetings, there's no option to do a practice session. You'll just have to create a dummy session and then go into it. So you have to create a dummy meeting, for example, and then test it that way. So those are a few of the differences. Oh, and actually the big ones as well is PayPal integration. So you can take payment for the webinar directly integrated. We'll speak about that in a bit as well. And also email reminders. So all the email reminders for the meetings, they're done in a more manual way, whereas the webinar ones, you can schedule the reminders. So you can schedule a reminder for a week before, 2 days before, and then the morning of, for example. But with the meetings, you have to do it more manually. You'll have to log into the system and then tell the system to send out an email blast. So it's a bit more fiddly in that sense.
I just pick on that point up, Daniel. You know, it's definitely useful to be able to send, if you do pick the webinar option, to be able to then schedule reminders, as well as putting together the webinar content and getting yourself ready to go live. Sometimes, unless you put clear reminders in your diary, it can be a bit of a bind to make sure that you're sending the invite a week ahead, and then reminders on different days, and then reminders on that morning. So yeah, I just would recommend that from our side of view and in our experience. Sorry, Daniel, back to you.
No worries. And actually, just to pick up on the meeting rooms, with the waiting room, you do have to keep an eye on the waiting room. If you do have that turn on, you do have to keep an eye on the waiting room, because people, as soon as they log in, they won't come straight into the room. So for example, now I see people are logging in, but they have to go through the waiting room first, and then I will have to admit them. I think it's a good security control, but it does mean that you have to be quite vigilant of that as people are coming in still. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide now. So yeah, we're going to do the run through of all the features, and we've broken it down into 4 aspects. So we're looking at the profile, we're looking at the scheduling of meetings, we're going to be looking at some of the settings, and then we're also going to be looking at the recording and the reporting options. So I think right now, actually, we've got a little poll set up. So I think right now we'll go ahead and run that. This is one of the great functions of Zoom. So we've just got a little fun question that we would like you all to answer. I won't read it out. I'll let you all just see it and react. I can see a few people's reactions, so we'll see those. Has everybody got that? Okay, we've got our responses coming in. It looks very cool. We've got 70% responses so far, 76%, 77%. Who's not responding? Come on, guys, it's not a hard question. 80% responded. I'm going to tell you all the answer once we get 100%. It's a tight one. 90%, 89%. Okay, some people are not engaging with this question, but we did get 89%, so that's good enough. We'll leave it there. So we did get, it was actually a chocolate cookie. Wow, fantastic. I didn't see that one coming. I thought we was going to have a few party rings in the house, but chocolate cookie took it. And then came in next, Jammy Dodger. I won't list them all off. Okay, swiftly moving on. We've got the profile, and Amanda's going to talk a bit about the profile for us.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. So for those of you that are just getting started with Zoom, first of all, you'll need to go on to the platform and select your plan that you want to take, and then download the Zoom app onto your computer or laptop. What's very handy is that you can also download it onto your phone, and it works particularly well using a mobile phone as much as it does using your PC. The sound is good, the video is good, etc. So that's just useful to know. Once you get to your profile page, this is just the basic bits and bits that you need to check. So first of all, it's really good if you put up a picture, particularly if you're working with small groups and you want to sort of talk to people and you want to sort of share your face. You need to also put, this bit's quite important because Zoom is a US platform. So you need to make sure that the time zone is set to GMT and London. I know that sounds basic, but sometimes it's very easy to overlook that, and all of a sudden it's expecting you to run it 8 hours later or 5 hours beforehand. You can also change the password for the profile, so you can make it something a little bit more, a little bit easier to log in with. One of the functionalities, and Daniel's going to talk you through a little bit, is that you can actually connect it to a calendar, and that's particularly useful if you want to go in and out, set up recurring meetings, etc. And then finally, as Daniel has outlined, dependent on the account tier that you've signed up for, there will be the different options to put the bolt-ons on to basically expand your functionality. So that's the profile page, but it's really important that you get all of those bits and pieces set up properly. You need to double check that your email address is correct, and it will also give you the link to the meeting that you're shortly hosting. So that just rounds up the profile page for you.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, that's the profile page, like Amanda said. Nothing else to add really. It's quite simple. Obviously in this screenshot right here, it's not the whole page. You do have a bit of space to scroll down. So here you'll see on the left, you'll see profile, meetings, webinars, phone, recordings, settings, account, profile. So this is like your main menu, and then you've got reports at the bottom there. So this is the main menu that you're going to be interfacing with. It's really clearly laid out. When you click on each of those, it just changes this main screen here. So let's move on to the next part, which is going to be meetings. So scheduling meetings. Okay, so with the scheduling of meetings, it is a lot. To tell the truth, this is the first time we're actually really using Zoom. Like you all know, we usually use Webinar Jam, but it does give you a lot of options a lot more options than we first knew. So we are probably going to start using Zoom ourselves. For example, training series, you can actually set up a training series. It doesn't actually say that it's a training series, but it has the functionality where you can actually make that work. So for example, what you would have to do at this point is there's going to be an option, and you're going to have, it's called recurring meeting, and you're going to have to check that box. Once you've checked that box, it's going to come up with times and dates. And if you select no fixed time, then that link is going to be that link is going to be accessed to that room all the time. So the members on that recurring series just have to keep that same link rather than getting different links all of the time. So they can use that same link to tap into that training series that you're going to be hosting for them. You can actually create several of these. So for example, if you've got the same training, one piece of training, but you've got several cohorts that have started at just slightly different times, you just have to create several of those recurring meeting links with no fixed time, and then send it out to each of those cohorts. And then they'll be able to have, you'll be able to have those running overlapping each other as well, which I think is a really great function. Right, so one of the big things is about the security. So with the security, I think it's really important that we see it. There's two sides of the security. So there's security that you can manage, that we can manage through the settings on Zoom. And there's a lot that you can do to prevent things silly happening, like people sending silly posts in, or people sending, I've got some funny ones, but I'm not going to go into it. But just in terms of people sending silly things in the chat, and also people randomly coming into your meeting. So there's a lot of options in Zoom that can allow you to negate those. And then obviously there's also the bigger issue of their servers and all of those kinds of things, which we'll get into a bit later. But for now, let's look at some of the things that you can do to negate that first aspect that I mentioned. So one of the things you can do is set up a password. So you can create the link, the all-important link that you'll get, that join URL, which you'll be able to obviously send out an email blast. You'll be able to embed it in your website. You'll be able to share it on social media for people to sign up. So you can actually, as well as having that link, you can actually have a password attached to that link. So once they click on the link, they'll still have to give the password. And you only give to you can give the password to only people that, for example, you might have a payment sheet where people have actually paid, and then you'll be able to compare that paid sheet to the people that have tried to get access. And then you'll be able to send the password only to those people that are meant to be actually accessing the course. Another thing as well is to ensure that you set up the waiting room. I think that's a key aspect, and that's why one of the reasons why I say use meetings instead of webinars, because you do have that waiting room functionality, which I think is pivotal. Because in the waiting room, you can actually send them messages while people are in the waiting room, as you all saw. You can also see who is waiting in the waiting room. And then again, you can see who's there, and you can compare that. If it is a paid meeting that you're doing, you can compare that to the paid list. So you should have an Excel sheet or something where you've got all of the people that have actually paid. You can open that up, and then you can check that off, and then you can compare those lists. And then whoever has not, who is not on the paid list, you can actually deny them access, basically. You can send them away. And then once as well, you start the meeting, you can actually lock the meeting so no one else can come in. So once you know you've got all of your participants in, all your paying participants, you can just lock it. So they can't even access it anymore as well. So those are the few things that I would say can negate some of those negative effects of people just coming in and jumping in and all of that kind of jazz. So those are the things that I would say would be really useful. And if you just have a look at the settings, and when you're going through the scheduling meeting, it is really quite, it's really intuitive. So if you look at this one where it says meeting options, enable join before host, never have that checked off. You don't want people joining your meeting before you get there. So just always have that one, never check it off. Mute participants on entry, I would suggest that you do that. Once you start the meeting as well, you can actually do a what I call a super mute. So people can't even unmute themselves, which is, I think, is a good thing. You have complete control on who can speak and when they can. So I think that's a really good aspect of it too. Anyway, swiftly moving on, because I'm just aware of the time. Remember, you get that joining link as well. There's two ways that people can join the class. One is through the URL and one is through your meeting ID. I suggest that you use your URL. So you just want to grab that link that is going to come up. So once you've completed setting up the meeting, you'll just click this save button. And then on the next page, it will have this URL, join URL. There'll be an automatic page set up by Zoom for that link. And you can actually take that link as well. And like I said, populate it wherever you want to be doing your marketing for the course or for the training. All right, we're going to look at some settings now. So first thing I'll say is co-hosts. It might be a bit hard to manage everything by yourself. And when it is, you can actually get a co-host involved. So for example, I've got Amanda set up as my co-host today. And the powers that she's got is that she can basically do everything I can do now, which is great. So what I would say you do is before obviously the meeting starts, the co-host will come on and they'll have to wait in the waiting room as well. So you would have to grab them out of the waiting room, just select and give them co-host powers, and then they'll be able to come into the waiting room, and then they'll be able to speak and turn themselves on mute, unmute themselves, make their video available, and so forth. So I think that's a really good one right there. Go for it, Amanda.
And just to pick up on that, I think all of our CPD standards research has shown over the years that if you have two trainers, whether that's online, live training or face-to-face, delegates will be much more engaged. It's just having two different voices, two different inputs and perspectives, and it does tend to break up the presentation. Not that the host, or Daniel in this case, is likely to be monotonous, but it just really keeps people's attention engaged. Also, if you are the host on your own and you get to the Q&A at the end of it and you're getting quite a few questions that you're not sure of the answers, it's really useful to have another host who potentially can pick those up.
Exactly.
And one other thing I would say is that Zoom is excellent for setting up the meeting, and then can talk between themselves before it goes live. Lots of webinar platforms, you have to set the live room up before the hosts can speak to one another. And the problem with that is that if you've already got delegates that have joined, they can hear the two hosts, the two presenters, checking the sound and the technical areas, which obviously isn't great. And that's something you want to do privately 15 minutes in advance. Yeah. Sorry, Daniel, back to you.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks for breaking that up, Amanda. I'm sure people needed another jolt of life. So co-hosts, I think it's a really good thing to have. Like Amanda said, they can help out with the admin. They can actually engage with people in the chat. And also when we get onto breakout rooms, they can also jump in and out of those breakout rooms as well, which is really helpful. I'm just admitting a few more people into the room. Like I said, you do have to keep an eye on that over there. So chat visibility, at the moment, you can all chat. You can actually not only chat to us, but you can actually chat to each other. So if you saw someone that you knew in the room, you can actually chat with them as well and say hi, for example. So that is one of the functionalities that you can have. But then obviously you can downgrade that and then not downgrade it, but just kind of restrict access, let me say. And then it's got several other options. So you can have everyone's message is just public, so you can get rid of that private peer-to-peer chat if you wanted to, and then you could have only hosts, so only people can message the host and no one else is going to see their message, so it's just private messages directly to the host. So those are some of those options on the chat, which I think are really useful. Go for it, Amanda.
So we've just had a question in about how you actually set up the co-host, and we've had a question to say that somebody has tried to set it up a number of times, but it didn't work.
Okay, let me run through that. It's really, really simple. So on the, can you all see your menu bars? For example, you can probably all see your menu bar. On R1, it says manage participants. All you would need to do is click on manage participants. A window will open with all of the participants, and then you just hover over the person you want to make the co-host, and then there'll be an option. There'll be two options. There'll be one saying unmute, and there'll be one saying more. You want to click on more options, and then it's going to have a drop down, and then that's going to include chat. You can ask to start a video. You can make a host. When you make a host, I wouldn't do that because that's actually going to give them all of your powers and stop you from being the host. And then it's got make co-host. And then you just want to click on that right there under make co-host. And then they're going to have those powers that I mentioned just now. So like I said, it's going to be in that main toolbar. You want to click on manage participants. The window is going to pop up. You want to hover over the person you want, and then you're going to hit more. And then that drop down is going to open, and then you're going to click on make co-host. And then that's going to be all set up for you. And then they'll get a message automatically like Amanda did before. And they're going to have those powers after that, isn't it, Amanda?
Yeah, absolutely. And we just had another couple of very small questions. So somebody's asked, can the co-host be in any country? Yes, absolutely. They can be joining from any other geographic location. And another question I just wanted to pick up in the chat is, can you make a co-host in advance, or do you need to be online early to do that? So our experience so far of using Zoom, and Daniel, correct me if I'm mistaken, is that you both need to be online early to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't set that up at the beginning.
You do have to, there is an option, there is a setting that you have to turn on to even be able to do that in live. So just make sure you go through those settings. And then, so like you can see on this screen here, where it's highlighted settings, you do just need to turn that on, turn that toggle on, and then you'll be able to set that up when live. And like I said, it really is simple. It's not going to give you any headache at all. You just click on that manage participants, the windows comes up, you hover, and then it's all done. It's literally a 5-second job to get that done. So yes, that's the answer in short. Was there anything else, Amanda, before I press on?
No. I think they're the main questions that have come in at the moment. Just so everybody knows, I am noting down some of the questions that you're asking because we may answer them as we go through the rest of the webinar, but we'll certainly pick them up at the end for you.
Perfect. Okay. Another thing is screen share. So you can actually give the option for your participants to share their screen as well. Which I think is, it could be quite useful for some of your trainings as well, if you want to do kind of like a sharing section where each of the participants kind of share what they've produced or what they've done. So that's another great option there as well.
Daniel, would you just be able to use the share screen option just so people can sort of see how you can sort of basically turn off your slides and make another window available in your PC that's uploaded?
Sure. So you just click on share screen. Like I said, again, in the in that window, the navigation bar that you've got, there's going to be a option called new share, and then that's going to literally open up all the screens that you have open. I'm going to touch on this in a couple of slides. It's gonna have all the screens that you have open there ready for you to click on. And just enter into, basically. So I can change the screen right now. What don't I mind you guys actually seeing? Let's see. You can have a look at this for a second. So can you see it's just changed? And now you can all see who's in the meeting. You can see sorry, you can just see this window. It's my my internet actually, so you can see at the moment. So let's switch that back. So it literally is, it's just 2 clicks. It will come up with all of the windows that you've got open on your computer. So probably before you start before you start the meeting, make sure you only have the necessary windows that you're actually going to be using. Otherwise, it can get a bit confusing if you've got 100 windows to kind of look through. I am guilty of that sometimes. I do have a lot of windows, and in those windows, I do have a million tabs also. So it can get a bit confusing. So make sure you've just got the windows open that you actually want to use before you start as well. Yes, so then also, this is another great one. You can actually remove participants. So sometimes I saw Simon there, he kind of jumped up so I could just see a few videos there. So yes, sometimes if there is a tricky participant, I know we've got a lot of controls, e.g. we can kind of turn off chats, we can mute people, we can do all of this kind of stuff. But if there is a hard participant in there, you do have the option of removing them and then also not allowing them to rejoin or even try to rejoin, which I think is really powerful. And that again is just in those options. So once you scroll through these options in settings, you'll see that one, and it is literally called remove participants to rejoin, and you just want to turn that off and they won't even be able to rejoin anymore. If it does come to that, obviously, as a final resort. Also, you've got file transfer. To get to file transfer, you're going to have to go through the chat option. So again, in that menu bar, you're going to have the chat option when you are going live, and then you're just going to click on chat, and then the chat option opens up, and you can just click on file share, and then you can just share files. So yes, that is the pre-settings, but a lot of these options, you do have to switch that toggle, like I said in here, to actually allow it to be an option when you do get to the live section. So make sure that you do check out these settings, because a lot of them, the toggle has to be switched on to enable you to access that when you go live. Okay, moving on. So when you go live, these are the toolbars that I was talking about, or the menu options. Just so you do not get confused, there is going to be a record button on your participants window. They can only record if you have granted them access to record, so they won't even be able to do it. That's just a natural thing. So it's not something you have to turn off, it's something you have to turn on. So don't worry about that too much. And
as the host, you can record the whole meeting, can't you, Daniel?
Definitely.
Have it available
Definitely.
as a replay afterwards.
Definitely. So I'm going to touch on that a bit later as well. There's actually two options for that, which I'll touch on. There's a local one, and then obviously you can also get the cloud service as well from Zoom, which does come at a cost, but it does have its benefits. So let's look at the host controls for a while. Those are my controls at the moment. So you've got invites, you've got manage participants, you've got polling, which we did just earlier before. You've got share screen, which I just demonstrated a second ago. You've got the chat, you've got record, you've got closed caption, which is talking about subtitles, basically, if you wasn't aware of that one. And then you've also got the breakout rooms, which is a great function as well, which I'm about to speak about in a second. The great thing about this toolbar is that you can move it around and you can shift it around. It is a floating toolbar, so you can put it wherever you feel comfortable. It's not going to get in the way of your presentation or anything like that. I do advise, if you can, and you have the option to do this, do get a second screen, because I think having two screens when you're running a webinar is really helpful. For example, I have two screens now. I have one screen set up with the webinar there, and I can see it, the slides that I'm clicking through on my screen share, and then I can also see a free screen, which I can kind of preempt things and pull things up that I want to use. I can see all of the participants that are in and that want to join. And I can see kind of the chat box as well on the second screen. So I think it does really, it helps a lot in terms of that full functionality and being able to see everything at once. So if you can, please do invest in that second screen. Okay, moving on. So checks while everyone is in the waiting room. So while you guys were waiting in the waiting area, we did a few things before we went live, before we opened up those floodgates. So we looked at the mic options. So right there, like in the screenshot, you can see there's two options down there. There's the mic and there's the start video option. You actually have two little arrows as well on either side of them. You click on those arrows and it's going to bring up all of these options here. You want to make sure that you test the speaker and microphone before you get into things. It's a great tool. It's pretty standard, but you just want to make sure that you've done that before you start any webinar meeting, really, because there are a few times where you can start and then no one can hear you because it's on the wrong device. For example, you haven't connected the right device. So I'd say that's a really, it's definitely one of those checks that you want to do before every webinar. As well, you can check, as well, actually, when I send out these slides, which I'm going to do at the end, there is a link here to a mic option. So I do recommend potentially getting a mic, and Logitech is the official strategic partner. It's not a plug, we're not getting anything for this at all, unfortunately, but Logitech is the official partner and they do have a great mic. They start from very reasonable prices. £28, I think, is the lowest price one, and then obviously they hike up from there. You've got check visuals as well. So with the visuals, you can actually add a virtual background. I know we're all at home at the moment. They do have some cool virtual backgrounds in there. So you can see over here in the second screenshot, you've got one, I'm not sure where, maybe she's in a coffee shop or something, but you've got a classroom one. You've got different options that you can actually put up there as a virtual background. You can also as well touch up your appearance, which I think is fabulous. So you can actually do a few touch-ups and glamorize your appearance as well. Get rid of some of those dark spots. So yeah, those are some of the things I think we should be doing before we open up that room to make sure that everything is sound and set up properly.
And the only thing I would just contribute to that is I have had a few people sort of talking about how they're setting up their Zoom, and changing the background seems to be a very popular tool, particularly as people are remote working, because you can, as Daniel showed you, just set up a very basic background. Because obviously if you're working from home and you're in a living room or a dining room, etc., you might not have the background behind you that you particularly want to display. So that's a great feature to use.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, moving on. So options for controlling participants. I've touched on this a bit before, but now you can see these screenshots, which will be a bit helpful. So like I said, when you click on that participants option in the main menu bar, which is down here, you can see, actually, let me quickly turn on a tool, actually, which I probably should have done before. So like you can see over here, this is the manage participants button. I just drew a circle around it. And then that's going to open up this window here. And then once this window is open up, you just hover over whoever you want. Like you can see here, you just hover over them and then you click on that more button. And then there you go. There's your make co-host right there. So that's pretty handy. As well, you can actually, one of the real good functions as well with Zoom is that you can actually do some integrations. One of them is third-party API. So you can actually get, and for the third-party API, it's the subtitle one, the CC. So you can actually get a piece of software that will allow real-time live conversion of your voice into subtitles, which I think is a really cool function, because sometimes people might have to have you on mute and they're just reading you. You might be working with a disability, maybe blind people. So that's sorry, not blind people, deaf people it would be. So they can actually read it. There are some things that you can do for blind people as well. Amanda will talk about those near to the end of the webinar. So like I said before, you can lock the screen so no one can join in afterwards. You can open while they're in the waiting room and see who's there. like I mentioned, and you can remove anyone who's not recognized, which I think is great, before letting everyone else into the room. You can allow people to enter in individually, like I did with Amanda. So you'll look out for your co-host who's in the waiting room, then you'll click on them, and then you'll admit them into the room, and then you can do all of your due diligence together and set up, which I think is great. You can message everyone, send out a broadcast message to everyone is in the waiting room like we did, just giving them reminders, okay, we're going to be opening up in 5 minutes, we're going to be opening up in 1 minute, just to reassure them that they're not just waiting in an empty space by themselves. Right, next we've got, oh, we've still got these annotations up. Next we've got screen views. So you can only edit your own screen views. It's not actually editing the participant screen views, but you've got 3 options here. So you've got the speaker view. So that's whoever's speaking. If you've got everyone's mics is on, and then you're kind of having a conversation with the group, that's going to be whoever's speaking is going to be the largest picture right there, and they're going to be on the spotlight. And then it switches when someone else takes over, which is really cool.
And that's where you've unmuted people, isn't it, Daniel? Where you've allowed them to speak.
Exactly. So that's if you allowed them to speak, then that's going to be the function. If you haven't, they're all just going to stay in those little boxes, like Simon, Leslie are currently for me, and a few others actually. We've got many others. We've got Barry, we've got Joanna, we've got Peter, we've got Elke, all with their screens on. We've got Margaret, we've got Tom as well. So quite a few people have joined up with their videos, and you can just slide through those as well, so you can see who's in. It becomes like a slide bar, so you can kind of see who's on and live with you with their videos on. Then you've got the gallery option. So the gallery option is like it's here. You can see everyone at once. It is on, there's two capacities. So on some devices, it goes up to 25. So you can see up to 25 people at once. And then on other devices, it goes up to 49. I'm not sure what device that is. It's gonna have to be a really big screen to see 49 faces. But if you've got a giant screen, perhaps that will be compatible. But it's probably gonna be 25 max that you'll be able to see on that gallery view. And then we've got the side-by-side option, which is this last one down here, where you can be looking at the presentation and you can also see everyone who's there as well. And you can actually, there's a toggle here and you can change the size. So you can make the presentation smaller and give more way for the screens and the floating heads, or you can make the floating heads smaller as well. And that's just that little toggle. And
there's a little question come here from Tom, which says, can you turn off your own video on your screen so you don't have to look at yourself? Because quite a few people don't like looking at themselves. And I think the answer to that, if I'm right, Daniel, is yes, isn't it? That's in the bottom left where you can turn your video on or turn your video off.
Yes, but that option is going to turn it off for everyone. So then no one's going to be able to see you. So if you just clarify that a bit, Tom, is it something that you just don't want to see, but you want everyone else to see your face? Or is it that you just don't want anyone to see your face? Because if it's you just don't want anyone to see it, then yeah, it is a really simple one. You just click that video button and then you'll see it turn red with a kind of cross go through it. And that means your video is off.
So Tom's saying just yourself.
Just yourself. That is a functionality I'm not 100% sure of. You could just hide it behind something. So you could open up something and just cover it up. For example, you could just cover it up with the participants list. So yeah, that's something you could do if you really didn't want to see it. So yes, in short, you could hide it. I don't think you can turn it off though.
Emma is saying you can press hide self view to hide yourself from yourself. There's 3 dots in the top of your little picture, says Joe, and that's hide self view. So thank you very much for that contribution.
If anyone else picks up on anything, please do share. I'm not an infallible source of information, I'll tell you that now. I've done my due diligence though, but please do share if you have anything to add. Here, we'll go into the chat options quickly. So with the chat options, like I said before, you can change those up a bit. Here you can see everyone publicly and privately. So that's when you can have everyone kind of interacting with each other, sending private messages and also sending live messages that everyone can see. Then you can have everyone publicly, which is when everyone can just send it into one forum and everyone can see those messages. And then you can have host only when only the host can see those messages that are coming in. And then you can have no one as well when only the host can send messages, but people can't message back. I don't know when you would want to use that function, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, and I would just pick up on that point, Daniel, is that do be careful and make clear at the beginning of your session what is happening with the chat, whether you want people to ask questions and there to be some interactivity on the chat like there is at the moment. We've got that open and everybody can see the questions and the answers, or basically how you want to control, you know, the participants asking questions. Sometimes if you've got a very, very large group, it is worth having, as well as the hosts, a moderator who's taking the questions down and noting them for you. And then they can flip that over to you very quickly at the end while you're taking questions, or they can send it in a follow-up document. But what you need to be careful of, and I think we've covered this before in our previous webinars, is you don't want the chat to start where people are having their own conversations and the participants are viewing that chat, and it's very, very different to what the presenter is talking about. So it's called standing around the virtual water cooler. So you don't want having people to chit chat or gossiping or, you know, getting carried away in a sub conversation. So that's something that I would just highlight awareness of.
100%. 100%. And then as well, so if you do want to go ahead and share a file, it's going to be in that chat option. So you're going to open the chat, and then there's going to be an option for you that says file. You just want to click on that, and then it gives you a few options there. You can send directly from Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, and I'm not sure what Box is, but you can send from Box or your computer as well. So you've got those options to share those files out. And again, with that, you can make it just so it's yourself that can share files, or you can make it so anyone can share files. So it really depends on what you need for it to happen for yourselves. Okay, next slide. Share screen options. I touched on this a bit before, but there's 3 options on share screen. So if you look at the first screenshot, you've got basic, you've got advanced, and you've got files as well. There, can everyone see my mouse now on the screen? Can you just say yes if you can see my mouse? Yeah, perfect. So you've got basic, you've got advanced, and then you've got files. Right here, this is on the basic screen, and you've got access to the whiteboard. There, you've got access to any screen that you want to share. So like I said, remember, only have the windows open that you're going to be using in the webinar. Otherwise, this is going to be a massive list of screens and you're going to have to be scrolling up and down looking for the right one. So please do make sure you've only got the necessary screens open there. You can also, and when you do open it, there'll be a green frame around the screen that is actually selected. So just so you know that, and you're confident that everyone's seeing the same screen or the screen that you want them to see, there will be a green outline around that screen that you've shared. Notice at the bottom here, there's 2 checkboxes. One of them is to share audio. So if you want to share audio coming from your system, coming from the laptop or the device, then you're going to want to click that. So it might be like a audio that you want to play. It might be a piece of music that you want to play. Who knows? But you want to click that button, that first one, and then that's going to allow it. Once you press that play button, they're going to be able to hear that audio that's coming from your PC or your machine. Next to it is another checkbox button. If you're running any video, so if you want to do a YouTube video and you want to share it, you're going to have to click that button before, because what that's going to do is it's going to give a little boost to the webinar, and it's going to allow it to actually render that video properly, so everyone can see it and hear it efficiently. So those two checkboxes, make sure if you're using sound or video in any of these share screens, that you check the appropriate box. Then you've got the advanced option that's there in the middle. That's going to allow you to bring up additional camera views. So you might have a camera that's looking at a document, and you can share that view of the document, or you might have another camera that's, I'm not sure, but you might just have another camera set up, and you can actually switch to that other camera when and if you want, with that advanced option. Then you also have the files. Like I said, it's linked in with Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, and Box as well. So you can just automatically share those files automatically on your screen from wherever they are in the cloud as well.
And from a teaching perspective, being able to share files, I think if you're distributing them in terms of workbooks, before you create breakout rooms, which I think Daniel's going to discuss shortly, it's a good way to send some information to people that they can then open to accompany what you're going to cover in the next part of your session.
Definitely. Okay, moving on to the next screen. We've got polls as assessments. So this is something that I've just recently found out about Zoom. You've actually got these polls, and it's a lot more, I don't know if I want to use the word robust, but it's a lot more advanced than I thought it was. So with the polls, you can actually do several things with them. You can actually set up 25 polls ahead of the meeting. So that's a lot. We've only done one so far. We're going to be doing a couple more shortly. I think actually we've got one coming up right now, actually, after this. But you can set up 25 polls in the meeting. Each poll can have up to 10 questions. So each poll can have up to 10 questions, which is in total, that equals 250 questions that you can actually ask participants during the length of the webinar, which I didn't know it was that much. So I think that's a really good tool. And also afterwards, you can actually get reports on those answers. So it's really important that you set it up properly so you can know who's answered what. Because you don't want to set it up as anonymous, because you can do an anonymous poll, which is like what we did just before with the biscuits. So we're not going to share out and say you're this biscuit and Simon's this biscuit and Leslie's that biscuit. We did an anonymous one, so your secret is safe with us. But you can actually have those where it does show who has actually answered it, and you can run that report, and then you can obviously grade off of the back of that, which I think is a really handy tool that you can actually utilize on here. So it's really simple. Go for it. Go for it, Amanda.
And I know that recently when we've been looking at Zoom, and some people have been looking at moving their online training into Zoom, which we'll cover in a second, polls is a really good way to stop a heavy or long session that you're running, and just to ask in a yes, no, or I'd like a recap of has the past or last 10 minutes made sense, and just checking what, yes, no, or please recap, and then you can recap the lesson accordingly, or say that you'll take it offline with that individual. We've just had a question: do polls allow multiple choice? No, they don't. It's literally just the checkbox answers. But as Daniel says, you can have quite a number of different polls through the session that you're running.
Sorry, Amanda, actually, to cut you off. By multiple choice, it does allow multiple choice, actually. So you can actually allow participants to check off more than one answer, more than one option that you give up. So yeah, you can either, you ask the question, you put the options down, and then you can say, okay, you're only allowed one option, you're only allowed to check one option, or you can check several, for example. So I believe that's multiple choice anyway.
Okay.
But we're
Apologies
gonna,
for that. Sorry, I hadn't come across that before.
that's fine. We're gonna launch another poll now. Again, I won't answer the question, but yeah, have a go at this one. People are thinking about this one a lot more. I can see
Yeah,
that
I
they're
think
coming through slower.
typo in this one. How many many assessment questions?
Oh, faux. Oh no, sorry, I forgot the R. Here we go. We're getting there now. We've reached 50%. 60%, edge in there. 70%, almost there. We'll wait till we get to 85 and then we'll say the answer. We're going up fast now. Okay, so we've got 0 to 10 actually took that away. So we've got 0 to 10, we've got 49% on 0 to 10. Then we've got 10 to 26% on 10 to 30. And the next one is more than 250. We've got 13 on that one, 13%. Okay, very interesting. Well, this is something that you could use to ask those questions anyway, and set up the reporting function afterwards to grade. So launching a poll is really easy as well. You can set up a poll before, like I said, you can set them up all before, and that will just be on your meeting screen. You'll just scroll down all the way down to the bottom, and then you'll just be able to add them here really simply. Or you can do them while you're in the webinar, which might be a bit more tricky. Maybe your co-host could set them up for you, but it's really quite simple. Again, it's just in the floating menu bar. You click on polls, and then you click on create, and then you just go ahead and write in your questions here. This is what it looks like, and then you launch it, and then people can answer it, and you get your feedback. So yeah, that is, oh, and as well, you can actually share the results. I would say if you have not done an anonymous one, don't share the results. If it's anonymous, then obviously feel free to share those results.
Okay, and we just have a little question in the chat there, which is, can the polls be saved and used again once you've set them up?
Once the poll is set up, that's a good question.
Grant, could you just clarify for us? Do you mean can the polls be saved and then used again in a future meeting, or can they just be repeated through one session? Okay, we'll wait for some clarification on that one.
Yes, perfect. I'll try and get the answer for you while we're going through things. So yes, here we are. We're at breakouts, breakout rooms, which I'm sure a lot of you are interested in that functionality. It's really useful, and this is one of the things where it is actually, it's on meetings, it's not on webinars. So this is one of the perks of having the meeting, and the meeting is actually available from the breakout is available from free for the meetings as well. So it's really useful. You can get on, you can test it, like I said. It does all the maths for you. So when you click on that option, you just put in the amount of rooms you want to divide it into, and then it will automatically divide your participants into those rooms, which is really useful. So you don't have to be faffing around and trying to move everyone around and so forth, or doing maths and calculations while you're going forward. The co-host can also go in and out of the rooms and help you manage those rooms, which again is very useful. If you've got many rooms, you're going to need a hand to kind of check in with everyone. You can do broadcast messages as well. So you can send out a broadcast message if something really interesting has just happened in one of the meeting room, in one of the breakout rooms. Then you can kind of broadcast it to everything else and say, "Oh, discuss this now. This just came up. Discuss this." Or you can send out a broadcast saying, "Okay, you've got 5 minutes left. Start winding down conversations because we're going to come back together." So it really is a
Okay, I've got a
useful one.
little question here from Alison, who says, where do you find the breakout room option, and click on it?
Okay, so the breakout room option, can everyone still see my mouse? Yeah, so the breakout room option is just gonna be in that floating toolbar. And it is this it's this 4 rooms, so it's like it's been split into 4 squares. It's 4 squares making 1 square. You just want to click on that, and then once you click on that, then this option is going to come up, this one right here, and it's going to ask you how many rooms you want to split it into, and then you just click on automatically. You can obviously do it manually as well if you want to be a whiz. You can do it manually, but I would probably settle for that automatic, and then just click create breakout rooms. It doesn't automatically send everyone to the breakout rooms once you created them. It's going to bring you to the next page, which is over here. It's going to show how it's divided everyone. So then you're going to be able to see, okay, Simon's with Leslie, or, you know, Joanna's with Elkie. And, you know, I don't think Joanna and Elkie get along too well. So I'm going to move Joanna over, and she's going to sit out with Tom, because I think she's going to add some good flavor to that conversation. So you can kind of mix it around and match it, so to speak, after you've kind of done that automatic process, which I think is really helpful. So yeah, that's a good thing. You can actually put a timer on how long you want the breakout room to be open for, so it can automatically shut. Say you want it to be 20 minutes, you can automatically shut it after 20 minutes, and everyone will just group back into that main conversation, or that main meeting room. As well, you can actually, when you've actually started the meeting rooms, you can easily move and exchange people still as well, between breakout rooms. So if someone said a really good point in one breakout room, and then you want them to demonstrate it to another group, you can send them over to that second breakout room, and they can go and demonstrate what they've said, their enlightened moment, to the other breakout room as well, which I think is another great tool that you guys can really leverage.
Okay, and just a question, Daniel, that's come in. Can the polls be saved and used again in further lessons? And then Martin's asked, can you have different polls in each breakout room?
Can you have different polls in each breakout room, and can the polls be saved? I think I can safely say, unfortunately, the polls can't be saved. I've just literally gone into our meeting on the Zoom platform, and I've duplicated, because it does have the option to duplicate the meeting, or use it as a template. So you can just duplicate that, and it's going to have the same topic, the same description, and some of those same options that you set up before. However, it doesn't have the polls there anymore, which was set up. So it doesn't look like those get automatically transferred. Now, they might be saved in the back end somewhere, which I most likely think they will be, because there's a report on them, but it's going to be a cut and paste job. So you're going to have to create and add them again to that webinar, unfortunately. So yeah, that's the answer to that one.
And just a little question from Susan. Can all the materials I've prepared for a session be stored again for future sessions?
Can all of the, say that again, sorry, can all of the materials?
So can all of the materials I have for a session be stored or used again for future sessions?
Yeah, definitely. It just depends where you're storing the materials. Like it showed, you can have them on Google Drive, you can have them on OneDrive, and then you can share them, or you can just have them hosted. You can just have them on your computer, and then share them again. So yeah, definitely. I mean, you can't host the materials on Zoom though, but you can have them accessible and ready to share whenever you're doing your meeting. Does that answer your question? If it doesn't, please do come back with a bit more to add on. But I'll move on to the next slide now. Was there another question about the polls? I think there was 2. I answered one, but the second one...
I'll raise it again in a second, Daniel, because we're conscious of time, and
yeah,
a couple
sure.
of people are needing to leave
Definitely.
because of time.
Okay.
But just if you are leaving, just to say that we are recording this session, and of course it will be available. I appreciate it's not a short session, but we just wanted to give you as much detail as we could for delivering Zoom as an online learning experience.
Yeah, and talking about recording webinar, here's your options. So you can record there's going to be several options on what you record. So you're going to need to go into that settings again, and recordings, and then you're going to have to look at, okay, do I want to record the active speaker with the shared screen, the gallery with the shared, what do I want to do here? And then it's going to record those for you, and that's going to be available either locally, so you're going to have to download it afterwards, directly after the webinar, and it's going to give you that, or the meeting, it's going to give you that option to download it. There's no cost for local. It's going to record it for you, but you have to download it. And then there's the cloud one. It comes at a cost. It does have a lot of features. So there's automatic CC afterwards, and you can search the video by words. So there might be a particular time when you was talking about something, you want to go over that. You can quickly get there by just typing in the word, and that's going to bring you to that point. It only comes with 1 gig free. So you'll probably have to increase that if you're going to be doing all the hosting on Zoom, posting all your videos on there. And here's the prices: 40 per month for 100 gigs, which is going to get you quite a lot of videos. But it's going to be £40, obviously. It does give you a link straight after as well, which you can share, and people can automatically access that. So it's going to save you some time in terms of having to download, edit, upload to YouTube or whatever, and then sharing that link. So it is going to save a bit of time. But those are your recording options.
Okay, and just a little question from Michael. Can you record the Spotlight speaker only?
Yeah, I think that was one of the options there. Record active speaker. If you wanted to record the Spotlight speaker only, I think you would probably have to turn off the other videos, so other people wouldn't be able to use the video, and then you would be the only active speaker throughout the whole meeting. So yeah, you can have people speak, but if only your video is on, then I think it will just video your face for the whole thing, but it will probably pick up the sound of the speaker. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I think it probably would pick up the sound of the person speaking.
Well, Bethan's asked us, will you automatically be emailing the notes to us? And just to answer that, Bethan, yes, our plan is to make this recording available, and then as of next Monday, we have an assessment form for anybody who's turning face-to-face or existing online learning into Zoom meetings. So we'll be able to accredit Zoom meetings and webinars. And what we will try and endeavour to do early next week, or certainly by the end of the week, is send out the Q&A for all of the questions that have come into the chat with the answers for you.
Definitely. And we'll move on to reports quickly. So you only get these as a paid member. You won't be getting these if you're on the free membership, but then it's just going to allow you to do things like who signed up, who attended, how long did they stay, how long did the meeting last, how many meetings did you do this month, which days did you do them on. So there's a few metrics you can measure things by on those reports. Polls, you got the reporting on the polls. Again, like I said, if you don't check anonymous when you're running these polls, you're going to be able to see the username, the email address, the date and time they submitted their answer, the poll question, and the participant's answer, which is going to be enough information for you to actually create an assessment out of that.
Yeah, and the other thing I would pick up, because I've had some questions about this, is this reporting is really useful for you to see who left early. Because if you're delivering online mandatory or compliance training, then you need to know that people have stayed for the whole session, perhaps because you need to report back to a manager or a director. So you can see who's left early and who hasn't sort of attended the whole session with you.
It's a brilliant point. And then you've got your asynchronous training as well. So if you're just looking to set up a video You know, you just want a kind of pre-recorded video, you can also do that on Zoom. You've got 1 gig free to do that with, or you can just obviously do a local one. You can record it and then download it to your computer. So that's just kind of setting up the webinar, not inviting anyone, and just running it by yourself really, and then downloading it afterwards. And then you've got the video, you've had all the tools, you can do the annotating, you've got the floating mouse, you've got the ability to switch between those screens again. So you have all the functionality, but you'll just be by yourself, and then you can share the video afterwards, which I think is also great as well. Again, you can add those subtitles in as well if you do upgrade. Okay, next, this is next level. This is when you want to get really deep and you want to start plugging in APIs and integrating it with other softwares. So you got PayPal. That's if you have the webinar option, which is £32 extra a month. You can actually take payments for those webinars. Alternatively, you can, if you don't have a payment system set up on your website or whatever, you can actually create a tech stack and run that through Eventbrite. There is a useful tool called Zapier that actually integrates different platforms together, and it actually sends automatic information. So once someone does something on one site, it will trigger the other site automatically. So you could have someone sign up on Eventbrite, and then they automatically get that invitation to the webinar as well. So you can actually connect those two using Zapier. Those links are there. It's going to be shared at the end of this webinar. And with Zapier, there is a cost with it. Again, you do get free 100 tasks. So that's going to be 100 triggers. So 100 people signing up via Eventbrite basically would exhaust that. So you'd have to go up to the next one, for example. But yeah, there you go. You can see those there. And then you can also do it with something similar with MailChimp as well. So those are a few things that you can look at on this great blog. Support, I'd say Zoom, has amazing support. It's got great support, just support videos. And then obviously it's got the chat function as well. If you do upgrade to business, you do have a dedicated phone line to call as well, which is great. But just in terms of like the free support and the pro support, I'd say it's really good because you've got those short videos that you just want digestible bits. So I want to know how to do the breakout rooms. You just go to the short videos. They're 1 to 3 minutes. They're really informative. Yeah, they're great, tell the truth. So the link's there. And then you've got longer videos as well. So a lot of the information that I've given in this webinar is based off one of their longer videos. So please do go ahead and click on that link as well. They've got several of those longer videos that are like training videos about the platform, and they are from 30 minutes up, and they're free to access. Right. So the downsides, the last bit, we're going down the mountain now. So we have questions around security. We have one that is talking about images. So Zoom's encryption and decryption, it isn't as robust as it should be. So for example, if you were sharing an image on Zoom, this is the original image, for example, this little happy penguin over here, and then you've got the encrypted image. So people would still be able to pull this off. Now, these are going to not be your normal people. These are going to be some kind of cyber people that are trying to hack and get information out for some reason, whatever reason that is. And then they're going to be able to see this kind of image based off of that. So if you've got really, really, really sensitive information and you're really, really sensitive about it, and you think someone's after your information, then yes, it might be something you need to be wary of. Otherwise, I don't think just the standard standard trainer is probably going to have to worry about it unless they've got some agency chasing after their information and they're trying to crack codes and all of that kind of stuff. So then you've also got the next one, which is talking about calling and voicing or listening in, people being able to listen in. So people have said that it's being routed through Beijing, China servers, which is saying that people are going to be able to listen in on the calls and tap into them. Again, this is it's probably possible. Well, it's not probably possible. It definitely is possible because of the way they've set it up. But if it's going to happen, and if someone's going to steal your information, I don't know how likely that actually is. Then you've got 130,000 subdomains associated with Zoom. Many of these, he said, include a number of terms like face tracking and live reporting. So this is kind of, and then it says if they've got subdomains linked with this, it means that they're probably undergoing these kind of activities. So are they kind of storing information on people during the webinars, basically?
Yeah, and I think the only thing to say there is these have been the main concerns about Zoom, but on a daily basis, they are working to correct these.
Yeah, definitely.
So as long as you're using zoom.us, then you should be absolutely fine.
Yeah. So you've got an address. The CEO himself came out on April the 1st and gave an address to all of the users. You can click on the link there to have a read through that. And one of the things that he said is that he's going to be trying to tackle all of these issues, and he's going to be actually putting out a weekly webinar on them every Wednesday. And this started earlier this month. So you can actually stay abreast of this as well, on what they're doing to tackle these issues. So they're being very upfront about things, and they're trying to tackle issues that have been put forward. Their user base has increased massively. So yeah, I'm sure they're going to have the money and the funds to kind of sink into security issues and to appease everyone. So I'd definitely say check into that Webley Weekend webinar if you do have any concerns. Okay, over to you, Amanda.
Yeah, of course. I'm really conscious of time.
Yeah.
So what I think we'll do is take a few questions at the end. If you want to pop some questions in the chat now, we'll then round those up in our guidance notes next week. So we just had a contribution from Lynn at the National Association of Disability Practitioners. She's one of our members. And hello to you, Lynn, if you're on the call with us. She just wanted to share with the group, and I think it's really important to highlight that you really need to think about how you're going to cater for everybody on a Zoom call, because it is important to be aware that people perhaps with dyslexia, dyspraxia may need to have the material kind of spaced out and spelt out very easily. So you're going to need to really think, if you do have a group with these particular needs, how you're going to use video, audio, whiteboard, etc., without it getting too overwhelming. The other point she's made is obviously it needs to be kept really simple and very, very flexible to switch things off and sort of guide participants around Zoom, which I think, you know, Daniel's covered well today. There is this software available, Otter, which helps deaf and hearing impaired users. So that's something to definitely check into. And of course, if you've got blind or visually impaired users, then they're going to have difficulty seeing the screen. And obviously that's pretty critical for a Zoom call. So what you just need to make sure that you're doing is making sure that you cover all the points on your slide as an audio. Now, it might be that you're not wanted to create heavy text slides, and that's absolutely fine because people do prefer to use a reasonable amount of imagery, but you just need to make sure that you're covering all that information off and contextualizing it. One of the questions that you could ask when you set up your email with the link on it for Zoom, you could ask anybody to respond if they have any disability options that you need you to be aware of. So you can get responses back on email whereby you can see, okay, well, I do have some hearing impaired users, I do have some blind users, etc. And so you can modify your delivery accordingly. So thank you, Lynn, for that contribution. I think that's all important for us to be aware of.
100%. And yes, someone just said Susan, so yeah, it definitely would. Otter would definitely be good as well for those foreign participants too. So it's just that automatic generation of subtitles from your voice. So it will just automatically come up on the webinar, basically while you're running it as those subtitles in a live manner. So yeah, it would definitely be useful for those people who are not who are foreign. Sorry. Okay, moving on to the last slide, and it is the question and answer slide. I'm not sure how long we're gonna run this part for, but what I will do right now is I'm going to put a link to the 30-minute consultation in the chat. So anyone who wants to schedule that, please do click on that link I've just put in there and schedule a consultation, 30 minutes consultation, so we can run over your plans on how you're going to be leveraging Zoom and the best ways to go about that. And we don't have to only talk about Zoom, we can talk about other pieces of tech as well that you might want to bring in. I'm also going to put in the chat quickly before we move off. Thank you for your patience, and you do actually get the slides now, so you can check out all those links. So go on, Amanda, while I'm just uploading the slides.
Okay, so there's just a little question from Sophie Fraser. What's the difference between a Q&A function and the chat? I think it's one and the same thing. Am I right, Daniel?
No, so there are a few differences. With the chat, it's more general. So you're going to have just people saying a few bits and bobs in the chat. But then with the Q&A, it's specifically for questions. And it actually has an up. So you can allow people who are attending, delegates, to actually upvote different questions as well. So there's that extra functionality. So you can actually pick questions that have been upvoted, I don't know, more times than other ones as well. So there's that extra bit of functionality in there as well. And it just streamlines the questions because everyone knows that it's only for questions as well. It's not for general consumption.
Okay, and just the last question that we'll cover from Susan, which is this a good way to prepare a short video training session, which I could just send to anybody who needs it, i.e. I wouldn't have people looking at it while it was being recorded. And yes, I think recorded Zooms are an excellent way to record yourself without participants there, and use that as a recorded video to send to people or learners before you then work with them in a live fashion. Daniel, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
No, nothing to add to that one.
Okay, so that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for participating, for joining us today. As I said, from next Monday, we are able to accredit Zoom meetings and webinars as formal CPD activities, and we are offering it as a free of charge service for anybody who already have that they'd like to convert to Zoom. So we'll be sending out the details of that early next week. And as I said, what we'll do is also try and put together a guidance notes document with all of the questions in for today. So I'd just like to say thank you ever so much for today, and we look forward to being in touch in the next few days with our webinar that we're running next week. Daniel, any final words from you?
No final words from me. Thank you everyone for coming. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, do please use that link to book up your consultation. I am having a little bit of trouble finding the PDF webinar at the moment, so I will send it to you all via email. Just having a little bit of trouble opening it up actually.
Yeah, that's fine. So we'll just send you a copy of the slides and the recording once we have it ready. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. We'll bring the meeting to a close now, and we'll look forward to being in touch with you soon. All right, take care, everybody. Be well, be safe, and we look forward to being in touch with all of you as much as we can. Thanks ever so much for your time.
Brilliant. Speak soon. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.